A few years after he founded DC Central Kitchen, Robert Egger was asked by a reporter who was confused about the work that we do, seeing that we weren't a food bank, we weren't a pantry, we weren't a soup kitchen. We approached hunger more from a business angle, but we weren't quite a business. And he said, "What do I call you?" And Robert thought for a second and he said, "I'm a righteous entrepreneur." Now this was before the idea of social enterprise, doing business motivated not by dollars but by change, or social entrepreneurs had made it into the lexicon. But we sort of dug that idea of a righteous entrepreneur and we stuck with it. But eventually we said if we're going to use this, we should probably define it. So a couple years ago, we made up 8 rules for righteous entrepreneurs. And the first rule is that it is okay to be a bit antisocial in pursuit of your mission. And the story I like to tell to illustrate this rule, actually, coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, happened in 2006 when I was part of Leadership Fairfax. At that time, we were, we'll just say, discussing the meals that we had been preparing for the District of Columbia and their homeless shelters for 17 years for free. They wanted us to do better. They wanted us to do more. And we did as well, but we were operating almost entirely with donated food and didn't have the resources to purchase a lot of food to make those meals better. But what we proposed is that if the district gave us just a little bit of money, we would put that towards purchasing and be a little more creative and thoughtful on our end to do what we all wanted to do. So this started months and months of conversations and hearings and panels. And finally the city said, yes, we do have some responsibility here. We're going to allocate this money. One problem, however, was they decided that because it was over $1 million, there had to be a full public bidding process, which we found outrageous, having been doing this for 17 years for free. But we went through that process. We won most of the contract. And the only thing left to do was to get that contract written and signed. And we were told that would take about 2 weeks. Well, 3 months after that, and we still had no contract, we said, this is just wrong. If we were a business, if we were perceived as a business, if we had that level of importance, this would not happen. If we weren't perceived just as charity, as something that was nice or right, but really extra, not as something that was smart and vital to the economic development and sustainability of our community, we wouldn't be treated like this. And we felt that we had to stand up for not only DC Central Kitchen, but for this sector. Because for so long, governments and others had said, here are some pennies, go solve our dollar problems. And that's just not the way to do business. So we said, we're going to go on strike. Something that probably nonprofits hadn't done because they either thought they shouldn't or couldn't, but we felt it was important enough, and that's the antisocial part, important enough to step aside for a moment and say no, as long as we were pursuing our mission. Now, to emphasize the seriousness of this issue, Robert and I also decided that while we were not delivering food to the shelters, that we wouldn't eat either. And that began 8 days of, you can call it a fast, you can call it a hunger strike. What it was is we didn't eat for 8 days. And that was an incredible time. It was a scary time, not knowing what was going to happen next. But it was also a time when I felt more than ever that what we were doing was right. It was a lonely time too. But it was also a time where I felt more connected to something bigger, something more important than I ever had in my entire life. And part of that was my classmates at Leadership Fairfax and my group. We were one of the last groups to go, and we were just wrapping up our project during these 8 days. And I remember a meeting that night, or during that week, and my classmates all rallying around what we were doing to support our commitment to that mission. Ultimately, we got what we wanted. We started getting money from the city. We were able to start purchasing food to do better meals, which was awesome, but we quickly realized that the way we were doing this was not helping our community grow economically or environmentally. We were actually crushing it by buying food that was ultimately coming from Europe, from South America, or from the West Coast. So we started talking to farmers and buying directly from growers that had given us food left over from farmers markets for years, but buying food that was aesthetically or geometrically challenged in such a way that it didn't have much of a commercial value. Ultimately putting millions of dollars into rural economies from southern Pennsylvania to the Shenandoah Valley. We were able to add shifts, not to prepare meals, but to process produce, to slice, dice, vacuum vacuum seal and freeze to use later, creating more jobs for men and women graduating from our culinary job training program, creating job promotion opportunities for those graduates who were already employed. And then 2008 hit, the recession, and many nonprofits panicked and predictably and understandably said, we have to lay people off. We have to cut services. We're going to have to ride this out and wait for a better time. But we said, we absolutely can't do that. We actually have to do the opposite and do more. But we have to do it in a way that's going to be self-sustaining, that is not relying on philanthropy. And ultimately, we settled on expanding our social enterprise in the world of school food. And we were able to pitch, and this was back in 2008 now, the idea of locally sourced, scratch-cooked school food. Salad bars, soup bars, nutrition education in the schools, helping these students understand why what they eat is important to how they perform in school and on the athletic field. Something that was sort of a quaint idea back then, but was popularized, thankfully, by Mrs. Obama the following year in 2009. And the District of Columbia, like many other school districts, after her work shined a light on this kind of work, were inspired to improve their school food. We applied or responded to an RFP for locally sourced scratch-cooked school food in a small number of DC public schools. We're awarded that contract and dramatically expanded our social enterprise portfolio. And again, we're able to create more jobs for the men and women that we train, men and women that have faced the barriers to employment of incarceration, addiction, abuse, trauma, homelessness, and other significant systemic barriers. And today, that work has expanded to a place where almost 70% of our budget is earned through social enterprise businesses. In 2006, before the strike, we were a small organization of about 50 with a budget of about $4 million, doing about $500,000 in social enterprise. Now, we're an organization of 190 with a budget of $17 million and doing about $9 million in social enterprise. All because we said no. We are going to be a bit antisocial in pursuit of our mission. We made that hard decision to do that, and we will continue to do that. And I hope each and every one of you will continue to make those hard decisions in pursuit of your mission so that we can make our shared community a better, a fairer, and more accessible place for everyone.